Health and Human Services scrapped a strange coronavirus program involving Santa Claus performers, wasting $250 million in taxpayer money. Now, the brainchild of this project was Michael Caputo, who's still on a 60-day medical leave because he spouted insane conspiracy theories. But let me tell you about what this plan entailed. HHS Assistant Secretary Michael Caputo wanted the Santa performers to promote the benefits of a COVID-19 vaccination and in exchange offered them early vaccine access ahead of the general public, according to audio recordings. Those who perform as Mrs. Claus and elves also would have been included. Now, there were some issues here. And the main issue was that while this might seem like a public health PSA coordinated, PR stunt, really at the heart of what was going on was more pro-Trump campaigning. And so officials kind of figured out what was going on. They scrapped the project. Again, Caputo is still on a 60-day medical leave, but here he is saying that Santa Claus performers are essential workers who are incredibly important to this cause. Listen.
It's quite clear that frontline essential workers, health workers, will be among those vaccinated early. And from my perspective, if you and your colleagues are not essential workers, I don't know what is.
I love you.
So the person you heard.
That was real, by the way. That was real.
No. It was real, no, but okay. Let me just say, the person who was ho-ho-hoing, he sounds like a lovely gentleman. His name is Rick Irwin. He's the chairman of the Fraternal Order of Real Bearded Santas. I just love that that's a thing and it exists, and I love that Santa Claus performers have some representation. Like that genuinely makes me happy. But anyway, Caputo's insane, and finally, HHS realized what was going on. They had to scrap the project, but they wasted $250 million in taxpayer money on the project before it was scrapped. It's just out of control. I have more details, but Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah. So first of all, on the Santas, they wanted to make sure that they get them out there by mid-September. Santas in mid-September. Wouldn't it make sense to get people the vaccine information? Because that was supposed to be the heart of it, the vaccine information. Number one, when the vaccine comes out. It hasn't come out yet. And number two, around the time that you would normally see Santa. I wonder why they wanted it in September and October instead. What happens right after October? Oh, and November 3rd, there's the election. I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. They just wanted Santa to get out there early. Early Santa gets the worm. So look, I don't know whether to make light of it or not, because normally the fact that Michael Caputo is on leave for having a mental breakdown is not something you'd be lighthearted about. But they're treating Caputo's ideas like they weren't mental. And to be fair to Caputo, I don't know why Trump's not on the same leave. Trump says the same things as Caputo. Trump believes the same conspiracies as Caputo. And Caputo said, oh my God, Trump's gonna love the Santa idea. Does anyone think that he wouldn't have loved the idea of Santa coming out in October to tell people that there's a vaccine when there isn't one? So, I mean, then you really got to break a couple of different pieces of news to your kids about the vaccine and Santa.
So there were several things wrong with this plan. Number one, there's no vaccine, and he was planning as though a vaccine had already been approved, and he had promised that the Santa performers would be able to get early access to the vaccine if they take part in this project. And so, I mean, it was a win-win for the performers, and it really did get their hopes up, because keep in mind, because of coronavirus, they're worried about their livelihoods. They're worried about whether or not they're going to get the seasonal work that many of them rely on. And so this got their hopes up when it came to that, but it also got their hopes up in regard to having early access to a vaccine, which again, doesn't quite exist yet. There are some promising studies being done right now, some promising, updates on it, but we still don't have a firm date or a firm vaccine to rely on. Also, the coronavirus ad effort titled COVID-19 Public Health and Reopening America Public Service Announcements and Advertising Campaigns, it was very lengthy, was intended to defeat despair, inspire hope, and achieve national recovery. It was to include television, radio, online, and podcast announcements starting immediately. But as I mentioned earlier, and we did talk about this story, at least a portion of this story earlier, there were celebrities who were supposed to take part in this, including Dennis Quaid, and they ended up dropping out once they realized that this was really more about pro-Trump campaigning than it was about spreading accurate information for public health reasons. In fact, here's Dennis Quaid getting real salty about it in an Instagram video.
So I did a PSA for Dr. Anthony Fauci, and he was kind enough to grant me an interview as well. And the interview and PSA were about raising awareness of COVID-19 and what we can still do to prevent lives being lost by this terrible, terrible virus. It was about the importance of wearing a mask, about social distancing, and it was in no way political. In fact, Dr. Anthony Fauci and I both talked about it before, that it was not to be political. This virus is not political. I was not paid 1 penny for doing this interview, and neither was Dr. Anthony Fauci. I am really disappointed that some people who call themselves legitimate reporters don't do their homework.
Okay, Mr. Quaid, but I get that in his mind, this was all about, and I'm sure he had no idea that this was really meant to put out pro-Trump propaganda ahead of the campaign. I'm positive he had no idea that that was really the heart of this whole project. But the Trump administration is known for pulling these kinds of tricks. Instead of getting angry at the media, maybe get a little frustrated at the lack of communication between you and whoever was communicating with you from the Trump administration. But anyway, he's not at fault. Dennis Quaid is not at fault. He thought he was doing a kind thing, a good thing, and unfortunately, he got the short end of the stick. So I don't want anyone to get upset with him, but this is the kind of stuff, these are the types of stunts that members of the Trump administration pull all the time. And again, I'm gonna just mention that $250 million figure, because while you have right wingers nickel and diming the American public when it comes to coronavirus relief, they're just throwing money away at nonsense like this. It's just infuriating.
Yeah, so first of all, on Dennis Quaid, I'll double down on he didn't do anything wrong. And he said later, people saying this was to help Trump, nothing could be further from the truth. So that's an interesting indication. And certainly, if you're him and you're talking to Fauci, you don't necessarily think you're doing anything political at all. But one of the reasons why people are getting on him is because I think they're confusing him for his brother. Randy Quaid is full-blown mental and supports Donald Trump 120%. So, I mean, if you've ever seen any of Randy Quaid's videos online, you're like, whoa, what in the world happened to that guy? So Dennis Quaid's got to be super frustrated given the situation and what people are assuming about him. But and I keep using the word mental here, and people will say, "Oh, hey, Cenk, is that right?" or whatever. But guys, there's a giant percentage of this country, 30 to 40% of the country, who are following people with literal mental breakdowns. Whether it's Caputo, it's Roseanne Barr, Glenn Beck, Randy Quaid, Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, Kanye West, you name it. And then they, so if people were not taking them seriously and they were getting them mental health counseling, I'd be the first one in line to say, yes, let's get them help, right? But when they say, no, they're not crazy. Randy Quaid and Donald Trump and Giuliani have it figured out. And it's because The fake media is creating a COVID, as Trump is saying, and they won't, maybe I should make it illegal for them to talk about it. Well, if you're gonna say that, well, then I'm gonna call you mental. And so don't pretend that these people don't have mental health problems when they clearly do. You keep pretending it, I'm gonna keep pointing it out. Now back to the program, finally, look, $250 million is a giant amount of money. Even for the government, that's a huge amount of money. And don't get it twisted. If they actually had a vaccine and they were doing real public service announcements to tell people how to take it and how to be safe about it, there'd be nothing wrong with that. The problem here was it turned out that it was just propaganda for Trump. And when people realized that, they're like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You can't pretend to be helping people with a vaccine that doesn't even exist in order to do Trump commercials right before the election. Not only is that ethically wrong, it's actually also illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. I'm sure to which Trump said, so what? I'm above the law. They impeached me, and those Senate Republicans, they're my dogs. And they told me I could break any law I like, so I broke that one too. Well, that's true. They are your dogs, and they do allow you to break any law you want. It still doesn't make it right, and people should not participate in it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.